We're going all the way to 10 a.m. If you just joined us, you've not made pretty much, but a lot more action happening here on the show. This morning, we're asking a question as to whether the establishment of a new oil refinery is the panacea to Ghana's high cost of fuel. We've seen gold for oil, we've seen our own oil refinery and its issues. The question on the minds of many Ghanaians is that why are we not helping Oil Refinery to come up? Why are we starting a new refinery? Why are we trying to compete with the state's own oil refinery that is crawling? Is it crawling, lying flat on its back? I don't know.
It's a non-starter. I mean, in fact, actually, if it's crawling, it's crawling backwards, because we know that TOR year on year records some astronomical losses. But you and I have been paying for a recovery of TOR by way of the TOR recovery levy every time that we buy fuel. An update, I think, would be essential for all of us to just take stock of where we are, because when it comes to TOR, I think about the issues. I just cannot wrap my mind around it.
You know, for me, the price of fuel, William, affects everything. Everything from food to clothing to transportation to everything. Everything revolves around fuel. So, question, will the setting up of a new refinery really help with the cost of fuel, William?
Well, first of all, we can't even compete when we can't compare.
Say that again.
I mean, so we can't compete when we can't compare.
That's right.
If you look at the two, what's the comparison? One of it is dead and gone, and the other one is now coming up, a newborn baby. And the late refinery. So you can't compare, that's said. But we are saying that because, there's a transportation component to almost everything. That's why fuel is so key.
That's right.
Everything that we do as a people, there's a transportation component. When this place was set up, everything that is here was brought in by a certain vehicle.
That's right.
That will be factored into the costs. Our presence here this morning, we came on wheels. We didn't come on foot.
No.
So if you ask the question, that's what it is. Now, this is what I was talking about this morning. The things that we're supposed to concentrate on, we are not concentrating on. We have allowed somebody to come and set up a refinery here.
Yeah.
And what I was reading yesterday, if it's true, I always want to put that caveat.
Right.
Because I'm not equipped to speak the truth the way it is. It is what I see that I say. So if it turns out to be untruth, then that's what it is.
That's right.
That we've given them a certain big rebate to come and set up. Huge.
Yeah. So the MP for South Dai, Roxy Nelson, H.A. Dapiama, 3 days ago, put out on Twitter, says another sweetheart deal for this Central company, TDC, led by Alice Oforiata, grants 95.31 acres of Tema industrial land, the size of a township, to this Central company for a paltry ground rent of 228,000 Ghana cedis for 60 years. Ken Oforiata gave this company $261 million in tax exemption. Do you see what I see? Well, I don't see. But here is the document. Now it talks about TDC. That's the heading, the letterhead. Dear Sir, Madam, offer for industrial plot number INDH1/21/5 Tema, and it is proposed, to lease to you the above mentioned plot measuring approximately 95.31 acres or about 38.59 hectares on the following basis. 1. The term is 60 years commencing from the day right of entry has been granted, and the ground rent is 228,744 Ghana cedis 0 pesos per annum, payable in advance prior to the date right of entry is granted. The land shall be used for industrial purposes only. Building period. The lease shall be expected to commence building operations within 6 months of the site being handed over, subject to a reasonable extension for legitimate cause of delay, and to have the plot fully developed within 2 years from the date right of entry has been granted. Building plans. Proposals for the development of the plot and site must be submitted to the company for approval, and building permit obtained prior to commencement of any building operations. There are other covenants that are right there, but clearly. This is, and there are 3 paragraphs or so that I need to read to you. Paragraph 2 says, notwithstanding any provisions contained herein, your tenancy shall be subject to any new policy, rules, and bylaws that may be adopted or passed by the TDC Development Company and Limited or the government, insofar as it affects or they affect the TDC Development Company Limited. 3, your written acceptance of this offer must reach the company within 1 calendar month for the date hereof to enable us grant you access to the site, and as soon as we are satisfied that there is an uninterrupted and substantial physical development of the plot, or our legal department will be advised to commence action on the preparation. Signed by Alice Abena Ofori Atta, Miss Managing Director. The Managing Director Sento, and that's it. So our Tema Oil Refinery is crippling. We have not given it money to prep itself up. Not so long ago, Tor was in the news. Again, it was literally being sold off. And now we are reading this and many others as well. Are we really interested in our state-owned enterprises? Are we?
So the
how
first
did Nkrumah do it?
The first point of your comments literally confirm what I said. That's number 1. If we imported crude to Tor and we refine, at least we'll be looking forward to making some profit that will stay here. But this Sento deal, when they refine and they make the money, almost everything is going to go out to wherever they came from to establish the company. Now, this morning we also spoke about the state-owned enterprises that we've lined up for liquidation. 17
of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what would be the difference in the story of Tor and these 17? Same. I wouldn't even say similar. Same. So it tells us that over the years, when we set up state enterprises, we put people who are party people on the board. We put people who are party people as MDs and all kinds of appointees in the companies. And all these appointments, a lot of it, as we've seen per the evidence, show that they are done on partisan, parochial basis and not based on competence. And that's what has affected all our state enterprises over the years. I mean, state enterprises in Sweden and in Russia, and they are doing so well.
Even here in Ghana,
they are doing so well.
Under Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who envisaged and set them up, they were doing well. They were doing well in Swam Cannery.
Yes, so
Palugu Tomato Factory.
The model that Graphic adopted in the early 1990s, when it became a state-owned company but not a state-run company, helped. Because when the board and the management wake up in the morning, they are thinking commercial. They have no
profitability.
They have no hands, to the point that even the editor was given a long-term contract instead of those 4 years, so that the government will come and say, we don't like your color, the color of your skin, so go. So now they took a bold decision that, look, even the editor, even you're appointed at the age of 21, you are there as editor
until 60.
So you are free to do your work with a clear mind. Now the managing director is giving some targets. If you meet 4 years, they renew. So it's worked, and they've been able to pay dividend to government. But where they leave it, and now government has even come in and give them subvention, it's a problem. So the business models that these enterprises have run have also been problematic. Okay. When it's state-owned and it's state-run,
there's a difference. There's a difference.
Yes. I think that distinction also is helpful in thinking about the themes that we're exploring: state-owned versus state-run.
Yes, it is state-owned, all right, but it's not state-run.
So I can have shares as in it, but I am just on the back bench. You do the work, make profit, and give me my dividends for what my investment is.
And looking from the outside,
there's also the portion where I have shares in it, but I want to be there. I want to appoint the MD for you. I want to give you a board chairman, like what's happening at Georg. We have appointed an MD. The place is being run down. Then we have appointed a board chair who can't even control the MD.
So then it's definitely a question of leadership. And I think you cannot deny anybody the perception that the reason why our state-owned enterprises don't do well generally is because of this element of it being state-owned and also state-run. Because if we've seen that in the instances where it's not state-run, it's doing well, then what do you conclude from that? Okay. We don't run it. If it were a private entity, none of these would stand for. I mean, what company will just be there whilst you are recording loss after loss year on year? Nothing changes. Oh, the leadership is the same. The perks are the same. Everything is the same. You're doing the same thing and expecting a different result. The Chinese call that insanity.
Ain't gonna happen. Well, let's go on to the phone line now. Nana Amwesi, the 7th, is Executive Director of Institute of Energy Security, joins us now. Good morning, Nana.
Good morning to you, Johnny.
How are you, sir?
And to your listeners.
Great.
And good morning to my people of Ekunfi.
Great.
Particularly Ekunfi Aboro.
Nice. Nana, then. Nana, the big question on our minds this morning is, will the establishment of a parallel refinery to our oil refinery, be the panacea for cheaper fuel in this country?
Not necessarily, not directly, but then indirectly it could help. When you want to talk about fuel pricing, you are not just looking at the price from the international market, but you're also looking at elements like availability, accessibility. That's very key. If fuel prices, we are short of fuel prices or fuel products today, definitely in a market where supply and demand dynamics play a key role in pricing, if there's shortage, mind you, those that have the little products will seek to make the best out of it by adjusting their price because demand is exceeding supply. And so indirectly, if there's a local refinery that assures us of fuel supply security, and that element that may play in future is taken off the table. Also, if the central refinery or any private refinery or local refinery is able to connect with the upstream sector, and that is to say, I am sourcing my crude from Ghana, mind you, it's going to save that refinery some freight cost, some insurance cost in the supply of the crude to its facility. That saving can be transmitted into the pricing, and that can become also a point where we'll have a product price lesser compared to the international one. And so these are some elements that could help.
And in doing these calculations, you also are looking at the private sector participation. We have a letter here, TDC giving something to Central to come and set up a refinery. And the questions on the minds of many Ghanaians are that, well, why give out such a huge portion of land to have a competitor when indeed our own oil refinery seems to be on its knees, perhaps flat on its back?
Johnny, unfortunately, I would say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that idea of ceding a land to a private sector player.
Okay.
Remember, our downstream petroleum sector is deregulated. And so TOR doesn't own that right alone to produce, refined products. Remember already, we have Akwaba refinery in Ghana here. We have the Platon refinery. Yes, they are of small capacity. We can classify them as teapot refineries, but these are all private ones. And so if the CDC has ceded land to Centio or any private refiner to do a business, it's of course in line with our downstream policy. And I'm sure the CDC will definitely sell it and also put in place measures to, attract some royalty from that arrangement. We find nothing wrong with that.
Now, in finding nothing wrong with that, the Ghanaian populace are now beginning to ask if Tama Oil Refinery is up to the capacity to be able to give them cheaper fuel. For example, we've heard of the gold for oil, we've heard of the tank farms and all the conversations in between. TOR itself has come under it has been in the news that board chairman is conflicted, Minister for Energy the back and forth we've had with it. What really is happening to our TOR? Are they better placed to help us get cheaper fuel?
Well, before we advance our interest to the level or the arena of cheaper fuel, Johnny, I will first ask that we seek for fuel supply security. And that is what TOR is the initial thought of our founding fathers, was the thing that we should have fuel supply security. Remember, before independence, we were getting fuel sourced from Europe into Ghana. We had Texaco, remember? We had Mobil, we had Ajib, and others.
BP, we had BP as well, Mobil.
Exactly, Mobil and the rest. Kwame Nkrumah and his people thought well and said, look, instead of sourcing all our fuel from outside the country, let's set up a refinery. So they engaged Ajib. Today they call them ENI. Ajib is the same ENI.
Right.
Yes. And so they set up the refinery. It's not just to ensure fuel supply security, but Nkrumah and his people also knew that this is a technological setup where we can train engineers from. So it's necessary to set something up. The next is that they believed that one day we will find oil in commercial quantities. They knew we had oil in Ghana some 100 years ago, but we've not been able to, classify it as commercial in nature. And so Nkrumah and his people believe that one day we'll find this oil in commercial quantity. And when we do, then there will be that synergy between the upstream sector and the downstream sector that will be able to crack our own crude to even boost that fuel supply security we are looking for and possibly a reduction in price. Today, we have an upstream sector as old as 12 years that are still to connect with the downstream. They've not put in the right measures. When they set up the refinery, it was initially 25,000 barrels per stream day. It moved to 45,000. We've sat down after almost 50, 60 years. And we've not been able to improve on its capacity, on its, refinery dynamics as well. Every day, the issues or the things we get from government is that we are working to restore the refinery. One day they say it's coming this month, next time it's coming that until a new refinery, private in nature, has been set up. And we all see why are we doing this discussion. We find this refinery as a threat because they will be more efficient than some other refinery. 100,000 capacity refinery is going to employ 900 people. We have 45,000 barrels in the capacity. We have more than 900 staff, which will be more efficient. We have a refinery 45,000 barrels per stream day capacity, yet utilization rate over the last 10 years has been less than 25%. The private man will not treat its refinery like that. The minimum utilization rate will be 85%. And so economies of scale, when put into the dynamics, will show clearly that some oil refinery cannot be competitive compared to the private refinery that we're going to have.
Has the government showed commitment in trying to revamp the ailing Tama Oil Refinery? Because the workers have been agitating, they've been asking for it. If it is revamped, managed right under SIGA, because it's a state-owned enterprise, will we be having this conversation?
Well, we've not seen that firm commitment from government in putting Tama Oil Refinery in its rightful place. There have been periods that I have experienced myself around toll where it has worked. I can mention during the time of KK Sapon, it did a marvelous work. I can also attest to the time of Mr. Kwame Wadakun. Super work they did. And so if we want the refinery to work, we can put in the right structures and measures, and it will work. But it's not in that commitment from government.
But if they did, the people you're mentioning, KK Sapon, Iwadakun, and then after them, what happened? Where's the money?
You see, in the business of refinery, you have so many models to look at as to how you are going to run your refinery. One, you can take the crude supply yourself, refine it, sell it onto the market. It's one arrangement. You can also have somebody supplying you the crude. You're refining it at a tolling fee. That's a tolling arrangement. You take your fee per barrel, you charge. The person carries its products away. You can also run the refinery in terms of the crude supply and all that, but somebody is handling the operations and maintenance aspect of it. It's also done. So we can get a model today, even today that TOR has very bad books. We can get a model where TOR doesn't need to, input so much, but we can see the refinery running. Yes, your first question, I've escaped it. Why they did well and all that, why aren't we seeing money in TOR? Why is TOR not running?
Right.
You see, it's a matter of government policy. I can remember the time of farming, the Wadakun. Both was supplying crude oil to TOR to refine. $4.5 per barrel. So anytime TOR brings in, a boss brings in, let's say 1 million barrels, TOR is earning 4.5 million. In the space of 21 days maximum, because if they were running 45,000 barrels per stream day, in 23 days, they are done with it. They have 4.5 cool in their pocket. How much is their overhead, the staff cost? Far less than 2 million and all that. There was crude in the tank before he exited office. There were products in tank. I remember in December 2016, the first crude from Ghana's oil field, the 10th field, Cheneboa and Ra in Tume field, was sourced for Tamoya refinery. There was supply by AOT aboard a vessel, very common to all of us. And so it was in tank in January 2017. They refined that product. They refined another parcel that belonged to Boss. That was the end of it. The plant had to be shut down for maintenance. 1 year after the maintenance, no crude was coming. No better arrangement was done. Where was the money? Where is the money that will end from all these processes? Maybe one day it will be accounted for. But I think that we should look at the way forward. Johnny, what do we do with TOR? That's what we need to discuss.
Well, we do know that in the past few weeks, government, according to some reports, has been trying to silently lease Tamaoil Refinery to a private firm. It's a report that happened, the back and forth between the energy minister and the board chairman of GMPC, former chairman of the New Patriotic Party, Freddie Blay. And that was the last we heard of it. No definite decision, nothing. So that's where we are. No?
Well, that's why we are saying that we don't find any firm commitment from government as to how, if their intent, we don't see their intent on TOR. Remember, there have been periods that we also heard from government that the Tamoya refinery is going to be scrapped and a new refinery will be built.
Right.
Just some 6 years ago, our good friend Wachida who made that declaration at the venue where the TOR MD was, and was also scouting people to come and bring in crude and maintenance. And so you have seen policy inconsistency over the years. You find incoherency in all this. Yes, it's been 1 year plus that government engaged a transaction advisor to look at a lease arrangement for toll, where the president will supply the crude and handle the O&M and pay them a fee here and that. 1.2 million Ghana cedis has been paid. After 1 year, nothing has been done. No result can be shown. The company changed name from Decimal whatever to another Torenco. Meanwhile, today we understand that there are also other people that are interested in partnering toll. And for us, anything private that will seek to partner toll, we support it because government has shown by its own character that it cannot handle toll efficiently and profitably. So we believe in private sector engagement and partnership of toll. Today we know that one company, Falcon Energy or so, Legacy Petroleum, have all submitted their term sheet to toll as to engage them. We've also not heard anything. All that we know is government is so fixated on the lease arrangement.
Would you say that is because for all the facilities at toll, such as their storage tanks, terminals, and services such as tolling, are patronized by politically exposed individuals and companies who have refused to pay? That's one. Two, there's another leg of the conversation where Tamale Refinery owes Electricity Company of Ghana, the Volta River Authority, huge sums of monies plus salary arrears and all of that. Would you say these two, and maybe some more that I'll tell you, are the reasons government is not really interested and want to push everything towards the private sector?
Well, as human as we are, we always seek for our interest. And we were thinking that leaders rise above this, interest and seek national interest. But you've recounted just two. Yes, of course, everybody knows that there is a political interference in toll.
Right.
It's a public knowledge. Nobody can deny that. The NDC will come, will load people onto toll. The MPP will come and they will employ. Meanwhile, the capacity is the same. They choose as to who handle maintenance here and there. It's the public knowledge, Johnny. Let's not run away from it. It is one of the reasons for which we are here today. You commit the refinery into incompetent hands, and you expect it to be efficient. How many of the board members have run a business of refinery before?
Right.
How many of the board members have done business downstream? How many of the board members have really been in business? And so if you choose to elect the wrong people, you can't expect to get the right answers. And so, yes, political interference is one. You don't want to go into detail. I won't go either, but it's public knowledge. And it's about time that we move away from that. Either than that, we can conclude this morning that toll is on the verge of collapse. It's becoming a stranded asset. And watch it. If St. Hugh should start, Johnny, in August,
right,
and toll doesn't come back this year, forget it.
I don't understand you.
If St. Hugh starts, toll will become a stranded asset.
Right.
It will lose its value. And you know the capacity of St. Hugh. If they finish everything next year, 5 million metric ton a year. It's a little far above what we consume annually if they choose to sell it onto the domestic market. They've taken all the business. They are seeking now and asking the Minister of the Trade that attended the last week program that they want crude oil from Ghana. And they want Ghana's crude to buy. Is going to present them some savings and competitive advantage because insurance and freight costs have been cut down.
That's correct.
We will sit here and the Chinese will move even into the upstream sector and secure partnership and deal there. Whether government chooses to do it or not, they can get supply from Ghana. This is a competitive advantage. And their type of technology they are introducing is far superior than toll's technology. They will cream the best out of every barrel of crude. Where does toll stand in this competition? It's done.
So what would then be our options? Do we need to quickly privatize Tema Oil Refinery because government, per your narrative and per the facts on the ground, has proven not to be able to run TOR? Or do we need to still stick with it as a state-owned enterprise? Because in the last 12 months, many of the key engineers and all the technical people either leaving to the Middle East from VRA, Ghana Gas, TOR, etc. So what are really our options?
In the business of refinery, economies of scale count so much. First, you have to look at your capacity, install capacity. Install capacity is far less than many of the profitable refineries we see today. 45,000, whilst others are doing, Dangote is doing 600,000 per stream day. You are going to do 45,000. Century is going to do 100,000. So capacity counts. The next is utilization rate. To what extent can you utilize that very facility and set up? In a month, can you run it more than 85% of the period? So capacity utilization also counts. The next thing is the refinery's configuration. Is it configured to run both light crude and heavy crude, heavy sulfur crude and light sulfur crude? You have to count all this. Somebody whose refinery is set up to crack more of light crude and low sulfur is more competitive than you, because few inputs go in extracting the derivatives from the crude. In all these three things I've mentioned, one thing stands atop: capital. If you don't have capital, no finance, you cannot upgrade your refinery. You cannot run it efficiently. Does government have money to do this? No. Run it efficiently. Does government have that competence to run it efficiently? No. The private sector, I'm sure, when if they should give that refinery to HAUs or Mr. Hughes and partners, I'm sure they will sack everybody from the board. Management will be changed because you won't show your money to the pigs. We believe in private sector participation at all. Yes, somebody will say if you give it to private hands, it's a national security issue. For 2 years, so has not refined product. What has happened in Ghana?
Are we then suggesting that we don't have the men to be able to run TOR the way it ought to be run? I'm talking about from the management level onto the board level, because you raised the key question about who we put where. Now, is that a suggestion that we don't have the men with the right capacities to either manage the day-to-day activities of Tema Oil Refinery, such an important institution, and also as board to administer it from the top and give direction? Do we lack the men?
Okay, let's look at it this way. If you have the men, the scorecard will show. The scorecard will show that in 7 years, a refinery that has capacity to run not less than 8 million barrels in a year, multiply 8 million barrels by 7 years, and let's see, we're talking about more than 45. It's almost about, let me say 40. Yes, 7 times 8, 56 million barrels in 7 years. And in 7 years, SOAS has not been able to run even more than 10 million barrels. This is the scorecard. The scorecard is this. In 7 years, SOAS have had almost 4 MDs, 4 managing directors in 7 years. It means that every 1.5 years, they change the managing director. This is the scorecard. The scorecard is this. SOAS have had more than 3 boards in 7 years. In the last 2 years, SOAS is not working, both the CDU and the RFCC. In 7 years, we hear about stealing at all. In 7 years, we hear people hesitant toll. Provident Fund not paid. Salary delayed all the time. Last month, they have to borrow money to pay the staff. This is the scorecard. What does it signify? Does it show that there are men or there are no men?
Nana Wesi, we will wrap up the conversation. Where do we go from here over this?
The new refinery threatens Toll's existence. That is a must. If anybody wants to see Temoya refinery work, start today. Don't wait anymore. And they cannot sabotage the private refinery. It's rightfully placed and acquired. And so the private refinery must work. But Toll must also work if we want it to work. Government must look beyond Torenco, the person that they are engaging on that lease agreement. They must look beyond them and ask other people to help. We get indication that the other two term sheets on the MD's table, they should move it forward as soon as possible. But the larger conversation is that Toll must see private, involvement.
In what form? In what form do we give it up completely? Do we give more space to the private sector in terms of shares to the private sector, or do we hedge Toll in that area? What do you say?
I mentioned about 2 or 3 models to you. In the meantime, look for somebody who is ready to do a tolling agreement, because you cannot see Toll to somebody or lease Toll for 7 years and probably plus. When record shows that Toll can work, it's a matter of leadership and the willingness to make it work, and the private, capital injection. And so we are not entirely against any lease agreement, but not for 7 or 6 years, not at all. We must also look at the tolling agreement. If we believe that, yes, of course, even the operations and management aspect, I won't introduce it because the ordinary Toll staff has capacity to run Toll. The people are skilled, I can tell you. If it's not the case, they will not be pushing them to Dangote, to what's the name, Qatar, and to the United Arab Emirates. They are poaching them every day. And so we believe that government should, engage the private sector to help. But let's start with a tolling arrangement as soon as possible. Then, of course, government can take its time to look at more solid engagement as to the expansion of the existing capacity going forward.
Are we expecting fuel prices to drop? For example, if we get more private sector participation, will that be the panacea to cheaper fuel?
Definitely in a competitive market, a market where supply it's more available and possibly exceed demand, prices will fall. People will have options as to who they buy from. Remember, even when we did a deregulation of the downstream sector in terms of pricing, somewhere in June 2015, the day it was announced, Gore dropped its price, Shell dropped its price. Today you see OMCs who are sticking to beat even Gore and Shell to prices because they are sticking for market share. Anytime there's competition, definitely it's near to the advantage of the consumer. So more private, refineries we should expect, and let's push for more.
Nana Moisi the 7th, I thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you, Johnny.
Grateful.
Super day.
Okay, Monio. 8:45.
Persecution